Hello and welcome to today's People Make It Work daily response video. I'm Zara, creative producer, and today I'm joined by one of our associates, Gregory Nash. Hi, Gregory.
Hi, Zara. Great to be with you.
I'm really delighted that you're with us today. Gregory is the former creative director of British Council, and he's also had a career journey of artist turned producer, turned executive, and a whole plethora of international experience as well. So really delighted to have you and your experience and your knowledge with us today. Thank you.
Great. It's great to be with you.
Could you start by giving us a snapshot of what you do with People Make It Work, and also why at this point in your career it's really important to be working with and supporting organisations and people to change and develop at this time?
For sure. Well, you talked a little bit there, Zara, about my background as an artist and then moving into producing. And when I talk to students, I always say, you've got to have a plan, but you can't ever plan because you have no idea how the culture is going to change, what's going to happen and how you're going to change. And I wonder if we may be returning to a place where there's less uncertainty around career progression and we're going to need to be more adaptable and more agile. My main interest in working with organizations and in the work I do with People Make It Work is to work with organizations that place creative values and vision at the center of what they do, and particularly with organizations that work with their teams and develop their structures so there can be collaboration right across the organization. And all of the skills and talent and understanding and experience of the whole team is brought into the work of the organization. And I think because of my background in international working, you mentioned my role as creative director. I was also director of arts for the British Council in what they call the wider Europe region, where I looked after 15 countries in Eastern and Southern Europe and Central Asia. And so I'm really keen to work with organizations, helping them to think more globally about audiences and to think about how they can connect, what kind of stories do they want to tell and who do they want to tell them to, and then to help them to find the partnerships that they might need in order to do that. I take what I learned as a choreographer and dancer with me all the time. I work with it every day, things around the organizing principle, leadership of teams as a creative exercise, a creative initiative, collaboration, ensemble working, and the sense that everybody is involved in the creative process of putting on the show, putting on the exhibition, and everybody has a role to play in that.
I love that perspective. I love that view.
There's two recent things, the two most recent things I've done with People Make It Work, which were interesting for me because they took me out of my sort of normal theatre and dance specialism. I worked with Hammersmith and Fulham on their London Borough of Culture bid, and they were successful in getting the Cultural Impact Award, which was great news. And the concept we developed, which was about celebrating the richness and diversity of the musical cultures of Hammersmith and Fulham. And that will now go forward post-crisis. And then the other thing, which has been a real revelation to me, is the Llangollen International Musical Eisteddfod. And I did an organisational review for Arts Council Wales, and that has led to a big rethink within the organisation of how they work and how they want to interact internationally. And also it's released quite a substantial amount of money from Welsh Government for a new creative director lead post. So I've had a really great time working with People Make It Work.
Could you speak to international perspective and your insights that are arising from recent work that you've been doing and an understanding of what is going on internationally at this time?
Yes. It's interesting. I was on a call yesterday with a large number of actually former British Council colleagues in EU Europe. They had asked me to give them a sense of what was happening in UK cultural organisations, and I got some stuff back. And one of the questions was around where is the UK cultural sector with Brexit at the moment? And I did a sort of double take thinking, well, actually, I don't know anyone who's been thinking about Brexit while all this has been going on, because inevitably we've been focused very much on our domestic situation, on survival, on supporting our teams. But something came up which was interesting, which was around how the fact that quite a few European networks are now moving online. So for example, the informal European theatre meeting in Tromsø, Norway didn't happen, it happened online. And the Aerowaves Dance Festival it was supposed to be in Rijeka in Croatia, that was online. So in a way, there's a very big opportunity for UK cultural organisations to still be connected to Europe, because now everyone's going to be online. Our physical presence may not be quite so noticed because we can interact online. But there was a very strong feeling from the colleagues that I talked to yesterday that everybody wants the UK to still be part of that conversation. And so when we get to my tips, I'll be urging everybody, despite everything that's happening, is to keep thinking internationally. I was also in a conversation last week through the CLAW Leadership Programme with 3 international fellows, 2 from South Africa and 1 from Hong Kong. And that was an amazingly contrasted conversation, because Maggie Cheng from the Hong Kong Philharmonic Orchestra was talking about how they have 80% of government subsidy. So they've been able to move content online relatively easily and access a large audience because, of course, there is huge internet access capacity in that part of the world. For the 2 colleagues from South Africa, where broadband coverage is not so strong, they haven't been engaging so much online. They've been engaging more in their communities, and they reported that there's a stronger conversation between cultural organisations and local communities about the future of culture in South Africa. And they talked very compellingly about a solidarity politics which is emerging. So 2 quite contrasting experiences there, where in Hong Kong they're fretting that people won't come back to the building, whereas in South Africa they're thinking, well, do we even need any buildings? So 2 very, very different conversations. And then just very briefly, of course, today in the UK, we've seen Nuffield Theatre Southampton go into administration. So while we're still very clearly focused here on the fear of surviving and on the need to stabilise and recover, the story in other parts of the world is very, very different to ours.
I think having a reminder that to stay open to international collaboration and connection, but also that mindfulness around this impacts everyone in such different ways in our own country, let alone like globally. So, you know, when brokering those conversations and coming into that collaborative understanding is, you know, understanding where everybody is at, and I guess asking those questions. And
yeah, I mean, I'm chair of the National Dance Network, and I would say that this situation has galvanized the network. We've gone from meeting face-to-face twice a year to meeting via Zoom every 2 weeks. And there are up to 25, 30 organizations. And you'll have a large organization based in London, and you'll have a smaller organization based somewhere else. But everyone is talking as equals. And what's come through those conversations is that strong sense of connectivity, of mutual reliance, and actually of some comfort as everybody goes through these very, very difficult times.
You mentioned before some tips that you have for us today. Would you be able to share some tips?
Yeah. Well, one touches on something you just said, really, Zara, which is around staying connected. That with everything that's going on, and for colleagues who are running organizations and teams, obviously that must be your first concern. But as you think about stabilization and recovery, to think about how it may be possible through your digital content to be reaching a broad audience in the UK and internationally. And as a lot of stuff has migrated online now, and as we're perhaps more used to engaging online, is to start thinking about your programs being balanced between live work and online work. And rather than thinking about it being an afterthought or archival, thinking about making more work online. And it could be that as UK organisations create more balanced programmes in that way and think more internationally, we'll probably be travelling less. There are environmental concerns, there are economic concerns. We may never return to the notion that international collaboration is all about physical travelling. So it could be that we have a more democratic access to international networking for UK organisations, because more of it will be done online. There'll be more networks online, and there'll be more platforms online. So I hope that one of the outcomes of this is that there is more democratic access for international relationships. And then I've got to, and I think as we emerge from this, if we reflect on what our South African colleagues were saying, is if we're in conversations with our communities more, will the nature of what we do and how we do it and where we do it change quite significantly? So my question in a way to colleagues would be, are you in the conversations with your local communities, and how mutually beneficial are those conversations so far? A question. And then my last little tip, which is more of a personal one, is I found recently an inversion of a saying. The saying is, don't just sit there, do something. And I saw an inversion, which is, don't do something, just sit there. And that sometimes it's okay not to be online, and sometimes it's okay not to be consuming lots and lots of content online. Sometimes it's okay just to sit and think and take a little bit of time for yourself.
I love that. Can you say that one more time? Don't
Yeah.
just...
So the saying is, don't just sit there, do something. Instead, don't do something, just sit there. It's okay not to be online. Just maybe just sit back and take a little bit of time for yourself.
I love that. Gregory, thank you so much for such valuable international insight and those tips that we can take away from this. Thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure, Zara. Thank you.